WFPRLP Franklin on 102.9 FM.
Okay, I'd like to open up the Franklin Conservation Commission meeting for September 19th, 2024. Apologize, we're starting 3 minutes late because, of course, we had a couple of technical details. Without further ado, I'd like to open up the first public hearing, which is the NOI for 15 Liberty Way. Is there anyone here or online for 15 Liberty Way?
Excuse me, did you do a
Wait, sorry.
roll call?
Yes, I just pronounced roll call, sorry. Roll call, I always forget.
Dick Johnson's here.
Louis Pugh is here.
Mark LePage here.
Jeff Livingstone, maybe.
Roger Trahan.
Nicole Sharmonti.
Yeah, that's it, right? No one online?
Michael's online.
Mike,
Michael Ryan.
Mike's online.
Hello, Michael.
All right, okay, now I'd like to open up the meeting for 15 Liberty Way.
Excellent.
I'm online here, Chair Livingstone.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
So since the last time, well, I guess for the record, my name is Chris Frateroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting. Since the last time we spoke, Beta issued essentially a follow-up review letter addressing some of the things that we had submitted to you previously, and in turn, we responded to that letter. And ultimately, it came down to essentially just submitting a fully complete stamped site plan and half a dozen or so things that we kind of agreed that we could probably condition in. like providing our SWIP document, the names of people who are going to be performing the work on the site, and those types of things. So ultimately, I don't have a whole lot new to share with you today. We did provide that final site plan set last week, along with, really just a couple of Ts to be crossed and Is to be dotted. And I do believe we're in a pretty good spot, hopefully, to approve this project at any time now. So if there's any questions about anything that's been submitted, or any concerns, I'd be happy to address those.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So, Bricolai, I think you had mentioned something about stormwater management?
Yeah, we're still waiting for a stormwater management plan to be filed with planning board and to receive approval for that. And based on historical precedents, the commission doesn't approve projects until that is submitted and approved.
That is true, Chris. We're typically pretty sticky about that. It's pretty critical for conservation. Is there a stormwater management plan in the works?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been, there have been stormwater management plans provided to planning board in the past, but with this redesign that we've gone through and scaling the project back, it itself has been scaled back pretty substantially as well. So my understanding was that, planning has essentially been ready to sign off on this for a while now, and just need to really make sure everything final is in place so that they can give that final approval.
So will planning board sign off without conservation approval? Yes. On the stormwater bill.
Last I heard, planning board's still reviewing.
They're still reviewing?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's.
That's
so
what I've
they-
heard internally from the town planner.
Okay. So basically, they have not yet approved the stormwater management plan.
Correct.
Without that approval, historically, we do not approve projects. So it seems that we're still waiting on planning for this approval before we can then move ahead. But it sounds like everything else is done, so it should be just a really administrative piece to have planning approve it. So again, given historical precedent, we would typically vote to continue to the next meeting to allow time for planning to do its thing. Does anyone have any objection to that?
Makes sense.
Okay, Rika, Monty, no?
Nope.
Okay, if that is the case, then I would take a motion to continue to October 3rd at 7:01 PM.
I'd give you a motion to continue the NOI for 15 Liberty Way to October 3rd at 7:01.
Second,
Okay. Richard?
vote to continue.
Vote to continue.
Continue.
Continue,
Continue.
Continue.
online.
Continue,
Okay,
continue.
Continued, no gavel.
So,
Okay, all right, continue, okay. Hopefully, planning will get that done, and we can, rubber stamp this next meeting. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent, sounds
thanks,
good.
Chris.
All right,
Thanks, folks.
so let me move on quickly to the next, hearing, which is the NOI for 5 Oak Street. And I believe this is the first for this, notice of intent, correct?
Sorry, no, this is
No?
the second one.
Second,
We
okay,
were
second.
looking for outstanding information. I have not received that.
Okay, so,
So.
okay. And specifically, is there a list, or do we have a short list?
Yep, so it was the erosion control line on the plan, which was required and requested by DEP. We tied up some of the other outstanding items, and then it was more mobilization, stockpiling utilities,
Okay.
things like that.
Okay. Is there anyone here for 5 Oak Tree, to represent 5 Oak Tree here in chambers or online? No? Okay, then I'll take a motion to continue to October 3rd, 7:02 PM.
I'll give you a motion to continue the NOI for 5 Oak Street to October 3rd at 7:02 PM.
Second that.
Okay, Richard,
Vote to continue.
Continue.
Vote to continue.
continue
Continue.
Continue.
online. Thank you very much. Okay, go on to the third hearing, which is for, again, this is 844 Lincoln Street, Lot 2. Is there anyone here or online for 844 Lincoln Street, Lot 2? Would you like to,
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm online.
okay.
Representatives first and then public.
Okay, sure. So this is a first, so this is a first for the NOI?
Correct,
Yes,
yep.
okay. Okay. Would you like to just fill us in on the project?
Yes, absolutely. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering, representing the applicant. For actually your next two items on the list, Lot 2 and Lot 3, 844 Lincoln.
Okay.
I'd like to start just by sharing my screen and give just a quick overview, if that's okay?
Certainly.
Excellent. All right, let me see if I can do this guy out. So everyone should be able to see the screen at this point, I believe.
Yep, you're good.
And so this is the site at 844 Lincoln. What we're proposing is to divide this into 3 lots, the first of which will contain the existing house, and then 2 new single-family home lots that will front on Amy's Way. But since they come from the same parcel, I kind of have to blend these together a little bit, but right now we'll focus on Lot 2. Along Amy's Way, I very crudely sketched in this blue boundary here. This is in an isolated vegetated wetland. If you look at the topography of this lot, which we'll look at next, there's a pretty steep slope from this kind of flat area here where the lawn is down to Amy's Way. There's a good 15 to 20 foot relief there. And really what this wetland is the result of is it's basically a roadside swale. The water that's running off of this slope is just getting caught up along the shoulder of Amy's Way and kind of getting stuck there. Realistically, you know, had this been graded out a little differently when they constructed Amy's Way, this wouldn't be there, but it is, so we deal with it. And obviously as well, it's an isolated wetland, so it's not jurisdictional under the act, but it is under your local bylaw, which is what brings us here. So with regard to Lot 2, let me pull this up. Here we go. I'll zoom in a little bit. So what we're proposing for Lot 2, just to orient you, this side of the screen where the details are and where my cursor is where the existing house is going to remain. This house is being positioned largely within the open grassed area that we just took a look at. And as we kind of zoom in here, you can see as we come down this way, there's a pretty substantial steep grade there. So the only way to really access the buildable area of this lot is to come through the isolated vegetated wetland. To do that, and in turn, obviously, we end up coming through your 0 to 25 foot no-touch buffer and all the way through the 100. We were able to position this and grade this out such that we keep the house and all of the hardscape other than the driveway completely out of the jurisdictional area. So that is by design, which is very good. With regard to the crossing itself, we've really tried to limit this. We've got a 14-foot wide paved driveway. We're keeping all of the grading along the side of the driveway at a 3-to-1 slope, just so it's stabilized, but we're tightening up as much as we possibly can. The grade out here does go kind of from a high side up by Lincoln Street, and then it does drop in grade as you go down Amy's Way. So there is probably some degree of, you know, a hydraulic connection that needs to be maintained through this small wetland. So what we're proposing is a very, very minimal fill over an 18-inch culvert that we're going to embed halfway into the ground, such that it's at its widest point where it's embedded, which will allow for the most flow to come through if, to accommodate any potential ponding or anything that occurs within here. But we don't believe that there's actually much that happens here. We don't have any reports of flooding or overtopping, and there's no evidence of it on site. In fact, this IVW itself is really kind of not very densely vegetated even. So we've really tried to respect the fact that it is a wetland, minimize our disturbance in that regard. The other place where we're proposing to disturb the wetland buffer and through the IVW is on the opposite side of the house. This is the side of the house that we're going to bring the sewer and electrical off of. And the reason we chose this side, if we zoom in here, you'll see this sewer manhole. This is the last sewer manhole in line, and it heads to the north. So if we were to try to bring the sewer out the driveway, we would end up having to extend this sewer main quite a ways, which would still be within buffer zone. And additionally, the last electric tie-in that we have is, and I'll just go back to this to show, is actually between these two lots right here. So we have to extend that through the shoulder of the roadway down to the lot, which is why, you know, to shorten that distance, we're coming out of that side of the house. Now, if you read through the notice of intent and the notes on the plans, we really did try to build some flexibility into this installation where, you know, we included a lot of notes that basically allows us to select the best location for it in the field. What we don't want to do is say it has to go in this perfectly pinned straight line and then run it through, let's say, a big maple tree that we could otherwise avoid. We're trying to minimize the disturbance here as much as we can. As far as the driveway is concerned, we are obviously much more locked in to a position there. But we have included, in both cases, mechanisms to replicate wetland disturbance. In this case, what we thought was appropriate and what we're proposing, because we did note that this was sort of a more sparsely vegetated wetland, is what we propose to do is stake this in the field immediately and catalog exactly what vegetation needs to come out of here. So that way we can get a solid take on species, on number of plants, on number of trees, and then we can replicate that at 2 to 1, where we're able to. The plan is to start replicating in the immediately disturbed area of the wetland, and then move our way out laterally along the edge of the wetland. One of the things that we have to do to replicate is kind of cut back this slope a little bit to make sure that we have the proper soil hydrology. And again, one thing we don't want to do is cut back the slope kind of without a lot of thought and consideration and end up uprooting a tree that could otherwise remain. So the plan is to kind of really do this as a field effort, get out there, determine the plants, determine where they can go, pull this stuff back by hand or with a very small machine so we can limit further disturbance just for the sake of replication. So we're trying to do this kind of as a little bit of a fluid type of thing. We're certainly open to comment. We're very glad to work with your agent on this in the field if that's appropriate. And obviously too, to submit a full catalog of what we intend to replicate in all of the details associated with that before actually doing so. So those are the final points of Lot 2. I can either jump into Lot 3, or we can go through questions on this lot now, whatever the commission desires.
Per public hearing,
There's a
but
public hearing, so we have to do them one at a time. Right.
I thought so, yes.
So just full disclosure, I lived across from this property for 10 years and owned the house right across, not from, actually, from Lot 3 on the corner. So I'm very, very familiar with this property and very familiar with the vegetated wetland there. We actually thought that the people that owned it, who were quite elderly at the time, would be developing that property many, many years before now. And so I'm surprised it's taken this long for it to actually come in front of the commission, to be very honest. But as FYI. So raised my 2 kids across the street. So.
One thing to note in that regard, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure you probably know this, but looking at the past subdivision data, it looks like Amy's Way and a couple of the other lots in this subdivision are actually cut out of this property originally. I believe they were all part of on the one.
Yes, so when we bought the property at 6 Amy's Way, we were told that originally it had been a big farm, a very large farm. I don't remember what it was used for, I think vegetables. But we were told that it had been pared down to only, I believe at the time it was 6 acres, because I think at least the laws at the time were if you had 5 acres or whatever it was, minimal, you could get the agriculture tax rate, but any land that you had your house on could not be used as part of that calculation. So there, I think it was 6 acres or something like that. I might have the numbers wrong, but apparently it was huge, and then there were lots cut down. There was some confusion at the time, again, remember, this is going back to 1999, that there was originally a developer that was supposed to develop the entire subdivision, which is cul-de-sac. They went bankrupt, they only had a couple of homes, one of which was the one we actually ended up buying, which was the model home for the division. And then another contractor came in and finished essentially the rest of the division. And between those two was when the property across the street was broken up and made, I think, a couple of different lots on the other side of Amy's Way. At least, again, if memory serves, that's what I remember the realtor telling us at the time, for what it's worth. So, but a very nice subdivision, and a very nice location, actually, to make two houses. It's a very large property with a very nice, large grassy area. The kids will always go there and play ball, because basically it was like having your own field. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, I have a few things. Eric, do you know if this has a historic definitive subdivision plan with planning, or do you need to go back in front of planning? When I checked with the town planner just briefly on the phone today, this hasn't been filed with planning. So she's going to look to see if this is a part of a previous definitive subdivision plan, but otherwise typically we like to see planning and conservation filed concurrently.
Sure, absolutely. This has not been filed with planning. This is currently one lot. This subdivision would be through an A&R process, which
Okay.
is, as you know, is frontage area and viable access. So the reason we haven't filed with planning yet is because when you have the consideration about viable access, the argument could be made that because there's a wetland in the way of the access, until we have some sort of green light from the commission, we don't really have that viable access.
That's true.
Sure.
So these lots 100% do conform to zoning. They have the frontage, they have the area requirement. So essentially, once we do obtain what we consider to be viable access, it's sort of a plan that just really gets rubber stamped by planning at that point.
So I have follow-ups to that, actually, because planning may require different driveway orientations, for example, and that would come back to our alternatives analysis. So it would actually behoove you to file concurrently, so we can get a better snapshot, which is what was required for the alternatives analysis for the wetland crossing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, sure, we can do.
Perfect. I'm gonna stray from my agent report real quick and then just recommend that the applicant should already know what's on the site for vegetation and what they're replicating. That's not an exercise that happens after approval. So that's something that should already be conducted, Eric. And then as well, I'm still reviewing the dewatering plan and the specs for the wetland crossing. I am scheduled to go out and review the delineation for this property next week. But I do have an initial comment. Eric, just take these down for now, and then you can respond in one big submission. I know you're proposing to replicate the IBW at a 2-to-1, which is great. It does exclude the buffer zone. Under bylaw, the buffer zone is considered a resource area, so that replication ratio should include the square foot of disturbance within the buffer zone. And you have not included a variance request for work in these areas, so the commission will need a variance request following our procedures, which is in our regulations, prior to project approval. Additionally, as I mentioned, the alternatives analysis. So in our bylaw and regulations, we state that the alternatives analysis actually has to mirror what's in 310 CMR. So that format needs to be followed. It is not, unfortunately, in either submissions. These comments are the same for both. And then, as well, our favorite straw wattles. I'm always quick to pull that out. So those are my initial comments. Eric Franklin typically requires biodegradable compost socks. So I tell you that now, so you can start speccing that out if you get project approval.
Absolutely. Can I just ask one follow-up question on that?
Sure.
With regard to replication of the buffer zone, is that 0 to 100 or is that 0 to 25?
It is 0 to 100. It is the entire buffer zone is considered a resource area. It is up to you and the commission to have a volley and go back and forth.
Okay.
That's your
Sure,
variance request.
Sure, I don't think these are things that are insurmountable. Regarding the question about the vegetation that's going to be removed versus the planning board possibly changing driveway locations when they see this, that's where I might get into a ping pong match that I'd like to avoid. Any suggestion on how we might go about doing that, or is it best to just go through planning and then come back when we're 100%?
The ping pong is actually, I understand that. It would prevent you from having to file additional filing fees to come back for permit amendments. And then something
Sure.
changes here, and then you have to go back to planning and pay additional fees. It is much quicker, albeit tedious, to have the ping ponging.
Sure, okay, understood.
Anything else?
Nope. I'm done.
Is there anyone online or in the room that has any comments? Yes, sure. Just state your name and address, please.
Sure, Christina Holtman, 7 Amy's Way. And I don't believe, Mr. Chairperson, that we overlapped at all and never actually got the opportunity
Oh, okay.
to be neighbors. But I might be one of those houses across the street that was then added perhaps after you sold the property.
It was, at least at the time, it was white. It was right across the street.
It's gray at the moment,
Okay.
but it's been that way since we purchased the home in 2015. And I agree with your statements that it is a lovely neighborhood.
Yes.
And I believe it was Fieldstone Farm
Yes, it's
was the name of
Fieldstone
the farm.
Farms.
There's a sign at the top of the subdivision. My issue, and I know an issue that has, I don't think, did I say Christina Holtman, 7 Amy's Way?
Yeah.
I did. My issue, and the issue I think that I've heard expressed from a lot of my neighbors, is the drainage issue that exists in the neighborhood. And I don't know, Mr. Chairperson, if it existed when you owned property in that subdivision. But it has been a very large issue over the last several years. And I know in the NOI that I read, it said that there was no flood issues and that any runoff was expected to just go into the groundwater, stormwater drain located along Amy's Way, which is actually in front of my property. It doesn't work that way now, and I can't imagine that these proposed changes to the IVW are going to change that or improve that, and I expect that they would make that worse. Every winter, or most winters, if there's really any water at all, we end up with a large patch of ice that begins right where that blue line that we were just shown on Mr. Dias' screen. Right where that blue line ends at kind of the edge of what is proposed lot number 3 and my property, which is directly abutting it at 7 Amy's Way. Thank you, Mr. Dias, for bringing it back up again. The water comes out from there and it goes on to Amy's Way, and we end up with a large patch of ice. My sidewalk along the entirety of 7 Amy's Way ends up being a miniature skating rink with a very thick slab of ice, which there's really nothing we can reasonably do about. It's not an issue of throwing out some salt. That also goes into the roadway. I think the DPW should be well aware of it because every winter they have to apply sanding well beyond what you would on a normal street immediately after a storm. It will last for weeks, if not longer. So they have to do additional sanding there, and most winters, for months at a time, you will see a sign, probably about in front of the proposed lot number 3, that says caution ice. We also just had the top of Amy's Way had to be repaved a year or 2 ago. I don't know whether the ice damage from that runoff was part of it. As you can see, my home, number 7 Amy's Way, which is next to proposed lot number 3, we have that large side yard there, and if there's any precipitation, that is a mud pit. I walk out there in my boots to walk the dogs, and there's about an inch of standing water. So I know the NOI makes note that there's no current drainage issues. We haven't had rain for the last 30 days, so I don't know if they've inspected it during that time period, where I agree there's no drainage issues at the moment, but there are recurring issues at various times throughout the year, largely in the spring and obviously in the winter. So those assumptions that there are no current drainage issues and there won't be any drainage or storm damage impact from the actions that they're proposing in this NOI, I think is a large misconception that a large part of the NOI is based upon. In addition to the drainage issues, I know there's a point in there that nobody has any private water, but I believe there are a couple of homes across the street that actually do have well water. Whether that would affect it or not?
6 does.
6 does, correct. And I believe either number 4 or number 8 might, but I know the current owner of number 6, who did state that she wasn't able to be here tonight, she might join online if possible, stated that she does have well water. Your probably former purchaser. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions within the NOI, and I would urge the commission to not approve these changes, or certainly without a large drainage remediation plan in place to correct the current issues and what I expect would be an exacerbation of the current issues based upon the actions that they're proposing.
If I may.
Yeah.
So just to validate some of what you said, again, this is going back historical, so things might have changed, but I do recall the gradient coming down that slope on the side of the house. I do recall that particular area of the sidewalk getting very icy. We had several dogs at the time, and we would walk them, we would avoid that area because it got very icy. I also remember my children and other children sledding on those sidewalks because of the ice. So I do know, at least at that time, there was still significant water runoff in that area causing a significant amount of icing. I'm not sure exactly what the neighbors at that time did about it, and I can't tell you that it affected the roadways as such, but I do know that, yes, at that time, at least given the weather patterns 15 years ago, very much so, you did have ice buildup in that area. And given the grade that goes up to the property, which is significant, up to the road, up to Lincoln Street, right? I mean, that is a significant uphill, and it's also a significant distance. So essentially, if you didn't have a significant amount of percolation in that land, all that water would basically come down. And you would actually see that actually in heavy rains. If you walk around the sidewalk from the Vankovich place, I think Paul's still there.
He is there,
right?
you're correct.
So from Paul's place, around the corner, you would see that, that vegetative wetland basically filled with water. And I just also want to point out that the characterization of it being sort of like developed spuriously is true, because if you actually walk through, you will see trees that mirror other trees that were actually built was put there by the developer. I mean, at least it seemed like at a time when we moved in, that the original plan was that all those would be lots. I mean, everything would be a lot all the way around the corner, and then they just never parceled out that farm, basically the farm lot. Basically only took the 2, and that was it. I think it was one of yours was 1, 7 was 1, but they never actually did the rest of it. So the original idea was to build out all that. So it was going to be cleared, it was going to be lots years and years ago, but then they just sort of left it. And the people on the hill, my guess is probably selling, wanted to leave it, wild, because it basically made a barrier essentially to the rest of the property on the street. Basically gave them essentially a privacy fence. So, but it wasn't for wetlands activity.
Right, and the water damage has not gotten better, I think, since you last lived there, Mr. Chairperson.
Yeah.
I know several neighbors have anecdotally said they often have water in their basement. I don't know if that's related at all. At number 7, I can candidly say we don't, but we also have a sump pump in our basement.
If I recall, and again, I may be incorrect, but I thought we were told at one time also that the tree line that extends from across Amy's Way, the stone wall and the trees like inside the stone wall, they kind of cut the property in half and go all the way down. And then the driveway of the house, I think is it 8 that's around, or?
Correct, 8's
right,
around the corner.
8, that goes through the quote stone wall, basically. Okay, that whole area right there, the reason why those trees were left there, if I recall, we were told there's an underground stream.
Oh, okay.
So, the reason I'm saying that is because we kept putting mulch in, and it kept descending, like for years, more and more and more and more mulch. I was like, where's it going? Well, there's an underground stream, and that's at least if I recall correctly, that's what we were told.
Yep, so, not an underground stream, but it is a developed wetland.
Oh,
So
developed,
I
okay,
went
okay.
back to 1919 on topos, so unfortunately, that's why all your houses flood. I'm a messenger, I'm an advocate for you, but in this regard, I'm just stating facts. So, it is a developed wetland. There is a 15-foot contour difference from this property to hers, so
Oh.
it's no wonder why everything sheds to her, and they're in a really interesting finger of contour lines wanting to go right to the Charles. So unfortunately, this development is right in the low-level spot of things going
Right,
to the
and
Charles.
that's true, because this Charles is behind you, right down.
Correct.
right down the
So-
road.
Call me and we can do some really nice landscaping and some things for your yards, because this house aside, to just have sustainable practices for your properties is what's gonna get you through, what the trajectory of things are going. I'd also like to remind the commission that because this is a single-family home, they're not subject to stormwater.
Right.
So,
Subject, but maybe, you know.
so, yes,
Yeah,
so.
Eric, would you be willing to look at that, right? I mean, you're looking at some significant variances. You've got almost 10,000 square feet of disturbance, you know, within the buffer, 725 in the wetland itself. I mean, maybe you could help out and address the drainage issues there as part of the project. What say you?
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. And first, let me say to Ms. Holtman's comments, I was not aware of drainage issue out there. I haven't been out there. I'm going off of, what I've been told. And that's part of this process, right? We find out things even after we've submitted. Certainly, not my intention, at least, to make anything worse. I think to your point, where we are looking at variances and we want to be neighborly, there's a few things that we can take a look at. To try to help out with what we're doing, and maybe even coordinate a little bit with the DPW and see if we can help get things on their radar and kind of, tag team this a little bit. So certainly gonna put it on my list of things to consider before we come back here.
Thank you.
I had
Would that
more,
help?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna suggest that. I was also going to suggest you reaching out to the developer yourselves. Oftentimes, because even though we can't legally require it, as Eric just demonstrated, they're oftentimes willing to do something. We've had previous single-family homes where developers have installed filter strips, things of that nature, right? Kind of like you attract more flies with honey sort of situation. And then, Eric, what I wanted to put on your radar as well, I don't know if your client knows or whoever is developing these houses, but Franklin has a pretty robust stormwater utility fee
Okay.
for
Yep.
impervious area. So that might be something that you would want to consider as well in your design.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Now I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay.
That was a good tip.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, unless the commission has any other questions.
I don't, does anyone here? Does anybody else in
Thanks
the
for your
audience or online have
Thank
any
you.
questions about this project?
Thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Please go.
Hi, I'm George Chow. I am 844 Lincoln Street. So I own all this property that's to be developed. And I grew up in 850 Lincoln Street, and I've lived in 844 Lincoln Street for the past nearly 30 years. So I'm very, very familiar with this property. When it was all pasture, it wasn't all tree-lined in streets. And when they sold, when they put in the road, they did dig in, they dug into, there was always a grade there, but to get, I don't know, the grading, I would imagine, for the road, the curve or whatever, they dug into the side of the road and put that swale along it. But when they did that, it was still pasture. Frank and Esther owned the farm. It was a 67 acre farm, dairy farm. He farmed it. The barn, the dairy barn is still there. And when I moved over there into one of the apartments, I helped take care of the lawn for them, to help them. They're kind of like my grandparents. I used to mow along Amy's Way after it was put, this is back in, I think, '88. I have the original plans for the road and all the lots, all the engineering plans. I did mow both sides of the sidewalk for a number of years, But then I stopped, I'm busy, and that's when the vegetation started growing out, and it became, to your point, it did become more wet. I can't disagree with that. And that hillside was pasture, but black walnuts have grown, maples have grown there, and all the undergrowth can't grow. I mean, it gets choked out by that. So the less undergrowth, the less lawn to sop up all that, this is my guess, I'm not an expert, it became more of a problem without the ground cover. So I just wanted to point that out, that I think possibly, well, I would think that it's something that could be remedied with the proper, grading or whatever. I think it could be, doing nothing is gonna not solve the winter problem. And I don't know, I just want to
No, that's helpful. Yeah.
put my 2 cents in. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, my wetland science hat is pinging. So black walnut and maples like wetlands. The
Yes.
reason why there's probably little vegetation on the undergrowth is because it's saturated conditions. So
Okay.
by not maintaining it, the wetland has been reclaiming itself.
Okay.
That is likely what's happening. So I don't think it's a new wetland, I think it's the historic wetland
Oh.
with current conditions as we have it coming back.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. So if you had a wetland, you basically turned it pasture and you let it go, and it basically went back to reverted, essentially.
Yeah.
Which could be said about the whole neighborhood that they live on.
Sure.
I
That's
would-
true. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I can-
That's why
That's true.
there's issues,
Yeah, that's
which is
true.
not your fault.
And it's not surprising given where it is and how close it is to the shores. Not
Yeah.
surprising.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, had to Lisa Simpson.
No, it's true, it's true. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Anna Dunn, 845 Lincoln Street, across the street from our lovely George Howe. And George and I and my husband have been neighbors for a long time. So, and we love him dearly, so he knows this. But I have to say what I believe in, so, and I know you
Sure.
understand this, George. The first thing I'd like to say is, when we got our notification to abutters, it says, Timothy Bobala has filed a notice of intent with the Franklin Conservation Commission for the filling of an isolated vegetated wetland and work within the buffer zone to install a driveway for a single home. Now, most people reading this, most of the neighbors that read this, thought it was just George wanting to build a driveway. They didn't get the concept of 2 houses being built behind George. They just thought it was George wanting to build a driveway. And the way it's worded, it's really, doesn't really tell you they're building 2 homes. And I don't know who that was on the screen. Was he saying there was 2 places to go, not 1? So it's 1 driveway and then there's another one? That's not stated on this abutters.
Yeah.
None of this is stated.
Did you get 2 abutter? I'm not
1.
arguing, you only got 1.
1.
So you should have gotten 2.
No.
1 for each, and
Nope.
then they likely wouldn't have been.
Nope, just
I-
1.
Because in this case, I mean,
So that-
we have to consider them as 2 separate projects.
Correct.
And there are 2 separate NOIs, so there's 2 separate filings. Each filing has to have its own abutter notification. So you should, she's right, you should have gotten 2,
Nope.
1 for each lot.
That
Did
is
any of
though,
you
if it's
get
been
2?
subdivided,
Did you
it's
get
1
2?
parcel, so at this point.
Oh,
I got 1.
But it is local filing only, so you could consider it 2 if you wanted to pull that jurisdiction. See what I mean? We're in a tough spot because
Just the way it's
planning
worded.
board hasn't subdivided it yet.
oh, I see. I
The
see,
wording
I
is
see.
very
I agree
vague,
with
But, okay,
vague.
yes, but, okay, so here, so I have a question on the process then, because my understanding is we went based upon the individual project, the individual NOI.
It's parcel specific,
Ah.
but projects can go over parcels. So like Grove Street was 2 parcels,
Oh, okay,
so then
yes,
it's 1
yes.
project.
I see, okay,
but this is one
If I-
parcel.
I see, okay.
But, so it's all
If I
within,
may,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
sorry.
if you look at the notice of intent packet, with the notice of intent for Lot 2 and the notice of intent for Lot 3, they each have their own notification. Because we filed these concurrently, we put the two notifications in the same certified mailing letter. So the envelope the abutters received should have had a notification for Lot 2
No.
and a notification for Lot 3 in the same envelope.
So Eric,
Nope.
sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you. We needed 2 notifications because the green slips are per notice of intent.
Right,
So you needed to send 2,
right.
double the amount certified mail return
Right.
receipt.
Because they're actually kept in different folders, one for each lot.
So you need to resend one of them. Which one do you have?
All right, we
2
can,
or 3?
we-
I'll show them. One second.
We'll just go off what you have. Yeah.
I mean, I see one driveway, one home. And-
You need to resend lot 2.
And it
Okay,
doesn't
we'll
even
reset-
say to build, it just says install a driveway for a single-family home. Does it say to build a family home? That's vague, very vague. And I question why there's no neighbors, that many neighbors here tonight, because they read
I
this
mean, Eric, that is
So-
true. that-
thinking it's a driveway,
Yeah.
and that's
If-
it.
So lot 2 you can't open. We opened lot
The
2, we
reason-
have lot 3.
If I may, the reason that it states that it is a single-family home, because, excuse me, a driveway to a single-family home is because the driveway is the only portion in a resource area or buffer zone that's under jurisdiction. So it did not, if it does not say explicitly, it says a driveway to a single-family home, which suggests that there will be a single-family home, but the single-family home is outside of jurisdictional areas.
So on the plan, you've got 7,645 square feet of permanent disturbance listed as purpose, driveway, house, and lawn. So is the house disturbance that makes up that 7,645 only in lot 3 then? Or is it
Neither. Let me just take a quick look to make sure.
25 to 100-foot buffer zone, 7,645 square feet of permanent disturbance, purpose, driveway slash lawn slash house? Right on the
Yes,
chart you
both.
got on the screen.
The house are both notices of intent. The houses are located outside of the buffer zone.
I'm just going by what you got written in black and white on that plan you had up. I got it up here on my screen as well. If you go back to the plan.
Sure.
Yep,
Which one? Sorry. Lot 2?
yep, well, yep. Yeah, so if you look at that disturbance chart, I can't read it, I've got it up on my phone, but if you look at that.
This one here?
There, yeah, there you, all
The drive and lawn.
right, so that's
That's for
different than
2.
what I've got on the drive. So,
So typically, when we send a butter notifications, what it would say is XYZ is proposing a 5,000 square foot warehouse with associated parking, stormwater utilities with approximately X amount within the 100-foot buffer zone, 200-foot riverfront area, and that's how you write it.
right, so-
This is very, very vague.
So basically, we would say that the notification is deficient.
Yes, it is deficient.
Okay, so it's deficient. I agree with you. I'm
And
with you.
people that don't speak
No, I'm with you.
engineering
No,
and all of this
I'm with you.
language
No,
do not understand this.
It's misleading.
It's
It is
very misleading.
Yes.
So what I would suggest is, we're here now, they resend out for lot 2 with the revised information. You just, you technically then, at this point, since you were properly notified, we
Can't
can't
open.
close or open lot 2, so you just go to lot 3.
Right,
May I just say,
yes.
if I didn't go online to find this information, I would not have known any of this,
Yep.
except for a driveway for a single home. That's it.
Yep.
You know?
No,
There's a big difference between all those pages in that planning and these few
Well-
little words.
Well, there's a reason why the notification exists, it's because the Conservation Commission wants there to be transparency.
But I didn't see any transparency with this.
No, and communication, no, we are agreeing with you. That's why we're calling the notification formally, calling it deficient. It's deficient, okay? And we're
That would be
asking for them
correct.
to.
Thank
We're
you.
asking for them to
Thank you.
redo it. And we're also asking for them, and I am asking as chair, that they communicate with the agent on the proper format and wording for a proper abutter notification, which is clear, communicative, and transparent,
Thank you.
okay?
And can
So-
that be
so-
done with what is it, lot 3? And what's the next, what's the
Well,
first
both
lot you're
2
talking
and Lot
about?
3 both should have.
They both, exactly.
Independent notifications, not the same, independent notifications with independent certified mailings and green cards, separate stacks that come to us with a non-deficient notification each,
Yes,
okay? And that is what we're asking the applicant to do,
okay.
yes?
They're two different projects.
And can that
We're
be
treating them
done-
as separate.
And can that be done before you move any further into this
Yes,
planning?
because we can't.
Because it's not, it
Because,
doesn't
no,
seem
we
fair
can't-
to the
we're
neighbors.
Formally, by our laws, we can't open unless that's been done.
Okay,
So if you're telling me
Thank you.
that we have essentially no notifications that are non-deficient, then effectively, we can't open either one tonight,
thank you.
okay? We haven't gotten to 3 yet, but if 3 is the same thing, then that's the same thing,
Right,
okay?
thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, if I didn't,
No.
and even in reading it, it's very,
The one thing we
A lot of
don't
wording
want-
in there.
No, the one thing we do not want is we don't want citizens to be surprised by developments because of unclear or misleading language. We do not want that to happen, okay?
thank you, I appreciate that.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
And just for the audience, for everybody, for informational purposes, a lot of this information, if not everything that we have printed out and had been submitted, it's on the conservation website under the meetings minutes.
Yep,
So
that's
you
how I
click on
found it.
that. The things that we speak about today or upcoming will be, basically it's all there. So even the plans and also the mailers as well, the certified mailers. So
Yep.
just to kind of.
Right, and again, as always, and this is to everyone who's listening in or in the room, if there's any question about where to find something, please ask the agent, please ask Ricolai. She's more than happy to direct you immediately to the correct information about any project.
I was going to say, I'm a one-woman shop, so thank you. Thanks, Louis,
Thank
for the
you.
shout out about the
Thank
webpage.
you.
I'm glad you were able to find stuff on there. But if it's not up there and you
But-
need it,
okay, and
reach out, I'll send
And
it
if
to
I
you.
may, this is why we beg for community engagement, exactly this.
I mean, I didn't want to be the one to go neighbor to neighbor to tell how to look this up.
But who
But-
would know?
But they
unless you
wouldn't have
did?
known,
Right.
because the few that I did speak with said, oh, he just wants to build a driveway. I said, no,
Right.
that's not what's happening. And I didn't even know it was 2 houses, and then I found out it was 1, then it was 2. So, all a big surprise to me, and I'm sure many others neighbors.
Mhm.
And I have another question. Well, maybe I don't want to jump the gun because it's on the other lot,
Okay.
but it's maybe just something to think about. So, I mean, it doesn't say where he wants to put the house on the next lot. And how close is that house to the Riverbend Reservation area? And the building, months and months and months, noise and noise and noise, will that drive all the animals in the Riverbend Reservation area away? Because they're very sensitive, and that is conservation land, for sure. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So, if we can't open or close, what shall we do? There's no one?
Vaughn, say thank you. Oh,
Go.
we have
I'm sorry, go
more.
ahead. Yes?
Oh, somebody else.
My name is Brenda Ryan, and my daughter and son-in-law live at 850 Lincoln Street, right next to George. We're neighbors. And so when he sends the notification again, will he state the type? Is this something for the planning board, or is that something for here? Is that the size of the house? Is it a two-story? Because they will be facing the back of that house. And we're curious, we went into the land, George doesn't mind, and we saw all the markings and everything for this lot 2. Did not see markings for lot 3, but saw it for 2. And that's wondering if that will be in the notification as to how big the house will be and what type of house it will be.
Typically for our notifications, no. They don't necessarily, if they include it, like, sorry, let me go back. So I draft legal ads, that's what I do, I put them in the paper, that's my portion of it. If I have that information, I'll include it because it's more information. Sometimes it's just a single-family home. However, what we have found, and you are more than welcome to ask Eric as well, is that's a pertinent question. So you can ask it, and they should provide it back to you. Here in conservation, we're more worried about ground disturbance.
Right. So Eric, what kind of house are they going to build on lot 2?
Well, if we're in a closed meeting, I'm not sure if I can answer that question, but I will anyway and say that at this time it is undetermined. All we know is we have a footprint of the house, and we know that it's located outside of the wetland buffer zone. From that point, the only thing it has to do is conform to zoning, and it is handled by the building inspector at the building permit level.
Hi, Eric. I'm on that permit as well, for building permit. What I would suggest, especially considering that the vegetation still has to be looked at, things like that, perhaps you do that and then just refile. And we can waive filing fees if that is
that's
an
fine.
amenable
Yeah,
compromise,
sure. Yeah,
but
for
it
sure,
sounds
yeah.
like there are, we identified some things where there's work to be done. So why don't you do some of that work and then you can resend a butters and then we can come back.
So can I just make sure I'm clear on the work that needs to be done? So we need to go to the planning board to get an A&R plan approved with a don't review the driveway locations.
So I suggested you reach out to planning to confirm that you don't. I'm not the town planner. So I would suggest that you do that due diligence. And then, we mentioned ping ponging. So it's not so much that they'll approve it first, but I'm not a town planner and I'm not part of the planning board. So perhaps they have something that they require with the driveway, which would then actually 100% impact our wetland crossing and the location of that driveway. And since the alternatives analysis was already deficient, I'm suggesting that you go to planning board, get all your ducks in a row, get all the information that you can, so that you can have a more well-informed alternatives analysis, so you can make the case of why you need to cross the wetland.
Correct.
I have
Will do.
one more question.
Yes?
Yeah.
My other question is, there's a building on the property right behind our property that I'm wondering if it's going to be taken down, because then we'll have the visibility to their backyard. And I'm just wondering.
Is it on their property?
It's on this, I believe, I asked George, is that, it's going to be taken down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think on the preliminary drawings, they showed they're going to be taken down. Some things are
Okay,
gonna be
because
taken
we'd like to leave some tree, there is a line of trees there that we'd like to stay so that it keeps some privacy between the two lots. Just make my 2 cents worth.
Okay, unless there's further comments here or online, all right? I think we just simply move on to the next lot 3?
You can't even open
Well, you
that.
can't.
We can't open.
Yeah, you suggested that he resend both.
That's right, okay, yep, okay. So we will just,
Can I just make a comment?
yes, please?
I would just suggest that we get a little bit more of a definite plan as well. I was a little concerned about the getting into the field and deciding where to put the sewer, electrical, and restoration area. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? No?
So I have a question.
Yes.
This second letter, that's certified letter that's going out, it will state that there's a second driveway for a second house.
Well, again, there's not just one, there's two.
Correct.
Two letters going out.
Oh, so
Two
they're
letters.
gonna resend
Because,
everything.
no, you can't put both in the same envelope.
I understand
You can't do
that.
that. There have to be two independent.
I understand.
Okay, so each one, if there's a driveway, will say, there's a driveway for a house. Okay, that's how it's supposed to work, not
Right.
just, I'm doing a driveway for a property which may contain a multiple allowable houses. No.
So they're basically starting over with two
Basically,
separate
yes,
mailings.
yes,
And that's
yes,
clear, Eric?
yes.
Yeah, that's clear, but can I just say one thing for the record? The notice absolutely did not say we're just building a driveway. It said we're building a driveway for a single-family house. It just didn't get into the specifics of the house, because again, the house
Yeah,
is not within jurisdictional
That's not
areas.
fair. I'm sorry.
There
that's-
was no
Eric, that's just not fair, okay?
Deception.
That's just not fair. There's an existing single-family house on the property. These people don't
The
know
only
what's going
point
on
that I'm trying
with
to
that.
make, Mr. Chairman, is that there was no deception intended. If it
Oh,
was
yeah.
worded incorrectly, it
I'm
was.
not saying there was any intention. That's not what I said. I did not claim that. But I'm saying
just
that
trying
as
to
a
make it
Joe
clear.
Q public, as Joe Q public, reading this thing for the first time with no context, it's easy to see how someone would be deceived, non-intentionally.
I'm not contesting that. I just want to make it clear that it was nothing intentional. That is all.
No, we're not saying
Yeah.
that.
That was not the inclination.
Yeah.
I would
So-
like to say to Eric, what was written, it says to install a driveway for a single-family home, which to me tells me you're installing a driveway to a home that is already there. You didn't
Right.
say installing a driveway and then
Well,
building a single.
Driveway to a home to be built.
Exactly, the
That's all you have to
building
say.
part was
A home
missing.
to be built. That's it,
Exactly.
right? That's not what it said. That's what I mean. That's why it is confusing. And-
Yes.
And again, anyone without any context or knowledge or anything, just walking in blind, which is what we have to consider like lowest common knowledge, right? We have no idea. I'm just looking at this for the first time. Yep, that's exactly how I would read it. I'm putting in a driveway for an existing home. That's what I would assume. It's not true, not right, not correct, but that's what I would take if I just didn't know anything about the project. Okay, and I just read this, said, okay, they're putting in a driveway.
I did want to bring up just one more point, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So there was talk about the wetlands, that they want, that Eric wants to, what is the word? Cross, and that it's dry, but now it's becoming wet again. So if it's becoming wet again, isn't it not land that should be conserved? If it's taking back
Well-
the conservation that it was?
Well, okay, again, remember, if it is wetlands, it is under protection. Okay, so what you do is you basically, if you're building and you have to cross or disturb a wetland, you have to come to conservation, ask for a variance against the law in order to make that happen, okay? And again, obviously, we ask people for very good justification, or we say, if you're going to do that with good justification, then come up with a restoration plan to basically restore that same area, usually in a 2-to-1 ratio, square area ratio, somewhere else. So at least, at the end of the day, right, you're at least hopefully somewhat equal, you haven't removed or added, wetland from the overall accumulative sum of the total wetlands. That's
Right.
the idea.
But in my opinion, if you have conservation land and you destroy it by cutting it down, you destroyed it. The animals are gone. Now you have to wait to rebuild, and it's going to take time.
True.
So you're actually destroying the land that was supposed to be conserved. And isn't that the whole point of conservation land, conserving the land?
All of that is
So
true.
it's kind of going backwards to go forward. It makes no sense to me.
Okay, but please understand, I'm not arguing with you at all, but please understand that the reality of the situation is people grow, and towns develop, right? Okay? And so, on one hand, you would love to conserve all of the wetlands, ideally. On the other hand, you would like to grow and develop because you have families that need housing or properties, et cetera, whatever, right? So it's up to the municipality as a whole to balance those needs. And what you will see if you come to these meetings enough, a long enough time, that we are always struggling with this balance. But so we put in place certain types of things that we ask the developers, we ask the applicants to do, for example, like the restoration elsewhere. It may not be possible to, preserve a specific wetland given the type of project. But at the very least, as a compromise, and again, it's a balance, as a compromise, we can ask them to recreate a similar type of wetland, somewhat like elsewhere on lot. In other words, you can't make it here, 'cause you're crossing, yes, you're right, you'll destroy this, you'll pull out those walnut trees, whatever it is.
And the animals.
Right, yes, okay. So, but at least you can carve out a section over here that you're not using and reseed it, put in wildlife, put in the wetlands plants, put in things that will ultimately grow, maybe not immediately, true, that's true, but immediately will create a new wetlands such that hopefully the fauna will come back.
But the
Right?
damage has been done.
I can't argue that fact. But again, please understand, it's a struggle to balance multiple needs of the municipality.
Well,
In addition, we can't be in a position, or the town can't be in a position, of denying that gentleman the use of his property, such that it becomes a taking,
Yeah,
or
so,
borders on a
Right.
taking.
True.
He has rights
of course he
to do
does.
things
Of
on
course.
his property.
Of
And
course.
if we arbitrarily and say, no, you can't use it for that, then we have another problem.
But I
So
guess,
there is a compromise.
Yes.
And that's what we
So-
desperately try to achieve.
I might be piggybacking a little too hard, but I want to at least talk about the positives. So isolated vegetated wetlands on a federal and a state level are not protected. The only reason that they are protected is because local bylaw says they are.
Correct.
So Eric tomorrow could get mad and he could just go to land court and per Richard, he'd get it. So that's where I don't think it's so much a compromise with development and destruction. It's, okay, how can we still get the most of what we can with our limited resources?
And our
Is that-
limited legal reach.
well, if,
Despite
And you
our
would be
advocacy.
pleasantly surprised that the compromises and the things they do, when it's all done, it's gonna look very nice. True, there's gonna be some construction, but
in time, it'll take time.
Yes.
It will take time.
Yes.
It takes 3 to 5 years to create wetland soils,
There you go.
and it takes decades for carbon sequestration.
That's right.
It's just a fact,
That's
but
true.
it is not regulated, because everything has to be regulated, so. that's
If we
the
take a
Beacon
look,
Hill thing.
if I've lived in Franklin for 20 years, and I've noticed the building and the building and the
Yes,
building, and the
yes.
building and the building,
Yes.
and the little green spaces that are left. And our area has the little green spaces that are left. And you, as a conservation department, that's your job. And if,
it's not our job, though, to
I know.
deny them.
No, what I'm saying is, if we give a little here and a little there and a little there, you're not gonna have any conservation land left, because it's gonna be so little.
So.
That's my thought.
It's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So conservation land is land that is owned and operated. Conservation jurisdiction are resource areas like habitat for threatened and endangered species. Unfortunately for wildlife, it's only threatened and endangered species. I love turkeys, I love it, trust me, I am such a Bible thumper, maybe that's not PC to say, but I'm such a Bible thumper for everything. But otherwise, they don't care. Unless it's a monarch butterfly, they don't care about swallowtails. They just don't. So it's conservation jurisdiction. It's what they have oversight over. It's not what they legally have a right to.
Right.
That's unfortunately the difference. So Riverbend, nobody can develop on Riverbend because that's conservation land.
Right.
Wetlands is conservation jurisdiction. The buffer zone is conservation jurisdiction. So that means any work in there has at least professional oversight. It's not just somebody going in and bulldozing and it's Fern Gully.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you.
conversation,
Yeah.
good questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to
Enjoy
say
the
something
participation.
as well. So everyone here on the committee, right, we all come from different backgrounds. I'm environmental science, Richard down there is in construction. But we all come together, I think, as a nice unit for the town. And so if that makes you feel better, I mean, we all care very much about the town and the spaces that are being developed. So we do take a lot of that into consideration.
Good add-on.
Anything else? Anyone else online? No. Okay. So move
Yeah.
forward. All
I'll
right.
refile.
Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We look forward to the next rendition.
Okay, so the next thing we go to is certificates of compliance, I believe. And the first one is for Northern Spy Road. Is there anyone here for Northern Spy Road?
Where's Northern Spy Road?
I'm here.
Okay. Do you just want to brief us on the work that you intend to do?
It's a
I'm not here
certificate
to-
of
for-
compliance.
Oh, I'm sorry,
The
sorry,
work-
this is cert, sorry, thank you, it's cert, that's a cert, okay. So it says here that this is a historic order for work within the 100-foot buffer zone, yes? That's pretty,
Yeah,
minute,
it's
right?
standard historic order, so there's no
Okay.
violations. I would recommend approval.
there's nothing, okay, right, okay, so there's nothing. All right, so we really don't need any further information, is there any questions? I don't think so, right?
No, Pretty straightforward.
Okay, all right, okay, fine. So, do we just simply want to vote to approve the COC for
Yeah.
North Spy Road?
Give you a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 15 Northern Spy Road.
Second,
Okay, Richard?
vote to approve.
Okay, Luke?
Approve.
Vote to approve.
Approve?
Approve.
Approve?
Online?
Approve.
Okay, I vote to approve, thank you. All right, and then the next one, the next COC is for John Edwards Circle. Anything there? No?
Seeing this one in the end zone,
Okay.
making all sorts of
Okay.
analogies today.
All right, I'll take a motion to approve.
Give you a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 5 John Edwards Circle.
Second,
Okay,
vote to approve.
Approve.
Vote to approve.
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 Approve?
Online?
Approve.
God, it's Union Street again.
Okay, and now, we go on to our favorite section, violations and enforcement. And the first one up is 305 Union Street.
Street, right, the nemesis. I thought that was almost done.
Well, they're-
They got their zoning changed. It still
Right.
it hasn't been officially purchased
they
yet.
still need to sell it.
And they still need to clean it up, so.
So we gotta keep,
Okay,
I give you a motion to extend the violation and enforcement for 305 Union Street for another 30 days.
you can just make a recording next time, just hit the. just
Yeah, I
hit
know,
the-
I know.
Okay.
I should have kept my big mouth shut about
I'll
a
second
year and a
that.
half ago.
Yeah, right?
Okay, do you approve?
Yes, I approved that.
You approve the extension, Mr. Luke?
Approve.
Vote to extend.
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 Extend?
Online.
Extend.
Okay, extend. Thank you very much. Okay, and then,
Prospect
we
Street.
have 00 Prospect Street.
What's going on there?
What is going on with 00 Prospect
I
Street?
need a letter.
Oh, God. I
Says
know.
the person who hasn't written it yet.
I'm just gonna come in and sit in your office now that it's actually, is it actually done now?
I'll be in on Monday.
You get the same cool color?
Yeah. It's
I'll
cool.
just come in on Monday and sit here until it's done.
All right.
You can chain me to the freaking desk.
Fine.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, my apologies, okay.
All good.
So, minutes, I looked at the minutes, I didn't see anything.
All good?
Okay,
Everybody?
good.
Anybody?
Motion to approve the minutes from September 5th, 2024.
Second, approve.
Vote.
Approve.
Vote to approve.
Approve.
Approve?
Online.
Approve.
Okay. Approved, okay. And the last section is discussion items. And I believe Briefer Lai wanted to talk about Stowett's restoration plan.
Yes. So I'm sure you all know, right? Stobart's up the road. All right. So this restoration plan was filed by Goddard Consulting at the end of August. I'm going to read my agent report, but I have a few anecdotes just based on some new information that I'm going to include, okay? So bear with me, please, as you usually do. So this plan is in front of the commission due to resource area violations located on the property of 444 East Central Street, or Stobart's. In early April, in response to a town council 40B presentation for 444 East Central Street, wetland violations were reported to the town, EPA, and DEP for unpermitted or unlawful activities on site. Given that the violation was escalated prior to town notification or town protocol, and did not account for proper procedure or protocol to take place by the town jurisdiction was more materially placed on hold until EPA and DEP can meet with the town to discuss the violation. So there was, the violations did come into the town between April 9th and 11th. I responded, I said I recognize these violations. It also was the eclipse. These violations were not the worst that we have seen across the town. For example, Fairmont Fruit Farm, CJ, but that was filling of 1.83 acres with 6 feet of fill. Pretty extensive, complete deforestation. This was some compost piles, some mulch piles, some trash, typical nursery activities,
So
for
not
example.
what you would call an emergency situation.
Correct. It had been happening for 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So I responded back. I said I'd get back to the individual that reported the violation, and that weekend it was escalated to federal level and the state level.
So I just want one point. It was
So-
escalated to the state and federal level before you had a chance
Yeah,
to do
to
anything.
properly address it.
Yes, to properly-
Or talk to you, right? So you
Oh,
are the
that's right.
board
That-
for
correct.
enforcement
We talked
orders.
after
So
this.
for new commissioners, typically when we get a violation, I go out, I review it, but I can't issue enforcement orders. It actually has to be issued with
Right.
one signature by the
Right.
chair, and that has to be ratified by the entire commission. So
Correct.
unfortunately, I'm not the one that makes the decisions, you are. So,
So that process was completely circumvented.
yes, especially since EPA was called, that needed to be put on hold
Right.
because
That
our
stopped
local
us. Stopped us.
it stopped us.
Froze
in
our
tracks.
hands completely, yes.
So I had a phone call with EPA. EPA reviewed the violation report. They viewed it as negligible. They said they didn't want to deal with it. So then I had a phone call with DEP. DEP also said it was negligible. Fun fact, Judy Schmitz, the chief, my section chief at DEP, she delineated that property 25 years ago, and she recalled it in the exact same conditions. So that's kind of fun. So her and I hashed out a plan, of what to do. Because as we've seen, especially with 305 Union Street, right? Enforcement orders do work and enforcement orders don't work. And until I hear a different direction from the commission, that if you would like me to police people and patrol people and fine people and ticket people and make conservation out to be the bad guy again, I will do so. But I would much rather work with people. It's kind of like getting pulled over by a cop for speeding. Would you rather a warning or would you like to be thrown in jail?
Hold on.
Probably a warning.
So again, I must just butt in here for 1 second. Again, I've been on this commission for almost 15 years. And when I first joined, it was a very, very penalizing organization. It was seen as very harsh. And let me tell you that trying to get the community to cooperate with this commission when it took that stance was very, very tough. And we worked very, very, very hard to turn that around. And now we have an excellent, I believe, excellent rapport with the community and the town administration.
That's because we're not trying to screw anybody.
Well, exactly. All right, so speaking as the chair, as a representative of this board, absolutely, we do not want to go back to the olden days of yore, or gore, right, okay? Because that did not work for anyone. So,
Thank
to your point.
So, I'll continue. So EPA deemed the violation as negligible and did not take precedence. DEP, after conferring with the town, agreed that a restoration plan should be requested to be completed by the end of August, which was approximately 3 months since the violation. I'd like to pause here and note that I don't have it pulled up because of the laptop fiasco. Thanks for bearing with me for that. But on the DEP enforcement order that you would sign, there's a box, it is pre-printed, that if there's an alteration to a wetland resource area, a restoration plan needs to be filed by a certain date. So that is what DEP, that is what the law, that is what our bylaw, that is what is required of us if there is a violation. In this case, we just didn't sign the form. We still got a restoration plan. So, continuing on.
So ultimately, we ended up what we needed.
Yeah.
With what we needed, we got the restoration.
Correct.
Yes.
So DEP, after conferring with the town, agreed that a restoration plan should be requested to be completed by the end of August by either the proposed developer or the current site owner. DEP also considered the violations as negligible, but made recommendations to the town on how to proceed with the restoration plan. Commissioners note that it is standard practice to have a restoration plan filed after an enforcement order where resource areas were altered. Unique to this situation, an enforcement order was circumvented, which nullified the need to involve town council. I'd like to note and say this is council as in Mark Sorrell. It's C-O-U-N-S-E-L. It's an attorney versus town council, which is the regulatory body, which is C-O-U-N-C-I-L.
Right.
Town council does not get involved in conservation matters because you take precedent with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right.
They do enact your local bylaw, or I'm sorry, they do ratify your local bylaw, but regardless, as a Conservation Commission body, you would be there regardless of a bylaw because of the Wetlands Protection Act. As you've heard me say in front of town council, we don't answer to them. So.
How'd they go over?
They laughed. I'm cheeky, they like me. So, unique to this situation, an enforcement order was circumvented, which nullified the need to involve town council, request fees, or prepare a court case against a longtime Franklin resident and business owner at the cost of Franklin residents. So I put this in there. This is generally more biased than what I put in my agent report for you, but I wanted to demonstrate that it's a horse apiece, right? So you as the body could have filed an enforcement order against Stobart's, but they're going out of business. Our main initiative, my main initiative anyways, as an advocate and as a professional wetland scientist and certified ecological restoration practitioner, is to ensure that resources are protected, mitigated, restored in the quickest way possible, in the least impactful way possible. And as we've seen with 305 Union Street, it doesn't work when someone's going out of business because they don't have money to hire a wetland scientist, they don't have money to hire an attorney, they don't have money to hire a consultant, they don't have money to clean it up. It would have gone nowhere, and we would have ended up in court against somebody who
I had no money.
wouldn't have been able to deliver.
And I said, at a cost.
At a cost.
To the citizens.
I would have
of
had
the
to
town.
involve Mark Sorrell.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do any of the other things, Schmidt's Farm master plan, Maple Hill master plan,
Right.
the open space plan, the actual master
Correct.
plan, anything that tries to bring Franklin, the vision of
Correct.
Franklin,
Correct.
wouldn't have been able to do it.
Correct.
So, that's why that sentence is in there. This is the best case scenario when it comes to violations. It is the understanding of the Conservation Department that the Franklin Conservation Commission would rather lead by example, prevent unnecessary penalties and strife, and protect resources in the most efficient way possible than barrage residents with tickets and fines. This is not to say that the violations on the site are not worthy of an enforcement order, however negligible, but the end result, which is a restoration plan, is the same whether the commission issues an enforcement order or not. It is generally recommended to take the path of least resistance and least impact with the quickest result to ensure successful restoration and protection of resource areas. If the commission would prefer to file an enforcement order against the current property owner to compel them to mitigate these violations, please discuss. I have not spoken to them recently, but I bet they would hire the same consultant that filed this restoration plan because they've already drafted it.
Yeah.
So it's not going to change. And
Right.
we know Goddard Consulting picks up a lot of projects in town, so they
Yeah.
probably would have picked up that one anyways. A restoration plan has been filed by the requested time frame by the proposed developer, which meets bylaw requirements at this time. I said please review. It's for you to review. It's still a draft, right? The restoration plan mentions that this is an ongoing development and the plan is subject to change. However, commissioners, please note that any violation within the wetland resource areas will be mitigated as required by the Wetland Protection Act bylaw and regulations. Under DEP's suggestion, the restoration plan will be approved to any subsequent order of conditions, and the order will reference the restoration plan. This allows the plan to be enforceable. I'm going to pause here and expand on that. So a restoration plan, as we've seen, actually, let me use another example. If you recall back at Franklin Heights, right, I mentioned the further away we go in that phasing, the less enforcing ability we have. So, orders of conditions are enforceable. Don't tell developers this, but if they dip and bail, it's a lot harder to catch up to them and enforce them or compel them to complete the work.
Right.
If you pull out restoration from an order of conditions, it is gold. And then if you tie in the order of conditions back to that restoration plan, it strengthens order of conditions.
Right.
That also means that if the project were to fail and not receive an order of conditions, they still have to clean it up.
Right.
It is the best case scenario to try and mitigate a situation for a small business owner here in Franklin, a longtime family, generational family business, to try and keep them out of trouble and then still try to protect the resources.
Correct.
That is my opinion. Commissioners are not requested to approve the plan at this time, but review it and provide feedback as deemed necessary. It is recommended that the commission inquire about the timeline for a notice of intent submission. Again, so making sure that we're covered, making sure that we will have something or not, so we know our next step. To ensure that this restoration plan will come to fruition, recommend continuing the review and discussion of the restoration plan once the NOI is filed.
So the developer is gonna do the
Yeah.
restoration.
Yes, and even if they don't get a development, they are required now to restore it.
Didn't we see a whole presentation on?
Yep.
It
Yes, we
was,
did.
it was
Wasn't-
preliminary, so they haven't filed anything. Yep, it was just concept.
Okay. Well, if it
I mean,
falls
the whole,
through,
the whole
we'll go
point of the
Plan B.
exercise
They
is
still
to
have to do it.
compel the cleanup, and we've got that, right?
And
So
you
we-
have that,
we-
especially
we
if
are
they
right
filed a
where
plan.
we want
And
to
this
be.
got started because somebody decided they wanted to make an issue about it?
Somebody reported a violation, yep.
I saw a bunch of conversation about why we shouldn't be even considering putting the development there.
And that may be valid, but this is in response to the violation now.
Yeah.
So it's not even, we're not even to the
No,
notice of
that's-
intent
yeah,
point.
We're not at that point.
Like, this is where we're at, and this is fast-tracked. You guys have lived and seen enforcement orders, and the fact that we got a plan within
Yeah.
3 months
Enforcement orders work so well.
is incredible. So, it,
Yeah, this is a good
I mean,
plan.
Yeah, there's certainly no upside in trying to penalize Stovarts here.
No.
That's got no end game.
What's the point? What would be the point?
Yeah, you know, we're not.
All we would do is delay, and delay, cause greater expense.
Let's
and go
screw the
backward.
whole-
Why would we do
Yeah,
this?
our goal is to get the land cleaned up.
Right.
We've got that plan in front of us, clearest, quickest way forward. I rate that as success.
And the developer probably already knows he's gonna have to do it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, he was here.
I've been out there,
he,
it's not gonna be the end of the world.
yeah, he does. It's being sold as is, you know, Department of Health went out there. We've all been out there now.
Yeah.
And it is compost piles in the buffer zone. It's being pushed marginally with small excavators up to the wetland boundary. And there's some trash. Very hard to mitigate trash in wetlands, okay? Very difficult. It may come from Stovarts, it may come from upstream.
What was the nature of the violation? What was the violation of the DP?
So DEP did not go out there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So EPA and DEP called me. The violation that was reported was filling of wetlands, but it's compost, it's just mulch and leaf litter and things like that. It's stockpiles, not of like riprap or anything like that. It's just,
Ultimately, it's, the material is
Landscaping.
fairly innocuous to it.
the biggest offense to me is that they planted a whole stand of trees and never harvested them, so it's complete
Well, yeah,
monoculture.
They had trees left
Oh,
over, and
yeah,
they put 'em
all
out
the
there, and
Phragmites.
they just left them there, and you gotta,
Department of Health said they had to trap the beavers, and I said, nope. No, we're not doing that. So there's a lot of other things. But, you saw EMC, right, 55 Constitution, where I stabbed my foot. That was, I think I showed you the pictures of, mountain of tires.
Right.
And that stayed until it was getting cleaned up. And I sat here and I said, are you going to clean that up? Do you remember that? And he said, yep, we'll have dumpsters out there
Yeah,
tomorrow.
they're gonna take out all that grown landscaping material.
Yep,
that
and they're gonna, well,
Invasive species.
I don't wanna talk about the plan, because I actually haven't seen it since they're preliminary, so I haven't spoken to them about any of the notice of intent
Yeah.
since, but.
So
So
we don't
it's
have
not
to do it-
unheard of, and I just wanted to say too, from a residential perspective, just because we have bylaws and regs and language for an enforcement order does not mean that should not be the goal, and that should not be what we use every time. That is a tool in our back pocket to compel people. I do not want to be seen as a ticketing body.
It's kind of the last
I would say
resort.
It's
a
the
tool-
last
a tool
resort.
To be used judicious
Correct.
right.
And only when that's.
and
Like,
strategic.
You don't want us to put an enforcement order on it, do you?
No.
No? Okay, then good.
I say that, actually. I do say
know,
that. I
that's
say,
what I
well,
said. That's
like, if
how we're
you
gonna-
don't want to listen to me, you can talk to them,
have
that's
to do
fine.
Questions, guys, comments?
So we,
Do you want, I'm sorry. This time
we
do you
don't
want
do it.
Comment on this?
Why don't, you could look at it. How about we continue it to the next meeting? You can provide me your comments now that you have a bit more of a background, right? Especially for the new commissioners. And then with your blessing, I'd like to request when they're going to file a notice of intent, so I can keep pace with this and
Yeah.
know who's going to own this restoration plan, whether it's going to be Stobart or whether it's going to be the developer.
Until the NOI is filed, we're not really going, we're not going to be able to do anything until that comes down the pipe.
You can, but I just need comments back from you.
Yeah, we could probably adjust the language of this PUD. right?
Correct.
So,
You can read into it.
yeah.
Over to
But
you.
it's not an official public hearing yet, no.
Right,
So
right,
that's your
right.
discussion.
So is that over to me?
Over to you.
All right, so, this is a chairman's discussion. So, since this project began, and since the DEP notification was filed, the chair, the agent, the commission, the town, and the federal and state agencies have been blasted by emails and other correspondence, some public, some not, essentially mischaracterizing, and in some cases intentionally
Some of the
mischaracterizing,
communication.
yes, what has been going on and why. As you know, I am pretty protective of the aims of this commission and the commissioners. I do not like people taking pot shots at the agent, at the commissioners, at our town, right? I don't like the commission being used as a weapon for personal vindication, or as a bat against a neighbor or some other business. I think that to allow that to happen puts us in a very bad light. I think it undermines our credibility. So I am quite protective. So there is an individual in this town, I will not name names, who has been essentially on a rampage, incessantly sending out notifications, instigating rapport, claiming that the commission is not doing its job, it's incompetent, it's deliberately deciding not to follow the bylaws. These are misstatements, they're mischaracterizations of a very serious nature. They have escalated, they've ratcheted continuously for months. I have gone to the town administrator, I have gone to town council in order to get this to stop. It has become abusive and very hostile. And to me personally and professionally, to the agent, and to this commission and to this town. And there will be action taken.
Good.
I want to tell this commission that I take very seriously the morality of what we do and how we do it. I think it's because we are a regulatory body specifically, I think we have to be very, very careful. I think we're very, very good, if I may say, in trying to balance the different dimensions that we are subject to with all these projects. Sometimes a lot of people leave unhappy, but I think in sum total, we're pretty good about doing balance. We don't come off as very penalizing, we don't come off as basically the granola nut tree huggers, okay? I mean, I'm just saying, all right? So I think we're doing a pretty good job. And if you actually talk to people in other organizations like MACC, of which I'm on the board, as you know, we have a very good reputation for doing just that. Okay?
Great.
So I want to say to all of you, to the town administration, and the agent, I will continue to try to protect the integrity and the credibility of this agency as long as I'm sitting in this chair. This I aver, and this I avow.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Support you 100%.
Absolutely.
And I think with that, I have no updates. Do we have any
Um,
updates?
Well, we
Yeah.
got one other discussion point.
Oh.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah, the.
that's a good one. We
beta-
want
Oh,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Please give me that
Scopes and
one.
fees, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's-
That one would be good.
That's
So at the request
Can I
of the,
just had a question.
Yes.
So I'm in total agreement with how we're handling Stobarts, but I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do to prevent the next Stobarts?
as in,
Calling
prevent
Louis the leg breaker? Or
what? Like,
Wow, okay, there you go.
like getting a
No.
violation after, sorry, guys.
I don't know, trying to catch these things before, I don't know.
Are you mentioning like a
Just bring it up.
violation?
I want to be proactive.
Like a violation?
Yeah, prevent violations.
So that's where it comes with education.
Just
Sure, that's where it comes with education. A lot of the outreach that the commission has been doing, right? A lot of my initiatives that I've been trying to do is educate the community. You could advocate for a bigger department. So I am a department of one. You guys all have the right to drive around and give me a call, and I can draft up an enforcement order. I do rely on abutters a lot. I like to say that I have 70,000 eyes out there, right? But Michael, I think other than that, it's a fine line between being prejudicial and driving around and
Correct.
babysitting people for violations versus not. And this is not a new violation. This is something that has been happening for decades because of the nature of the site. So, for example, I've been here almost 3 years. This is the first I'm hearing of it. These violations have been there. So,
Decades.
decades. And I have
That's
no
kind of my
record of
point.
anybody calling to mention that there was an issue, unfortunately, until it was proposed for a 40B. I'm not saying bo peep about 40Bs. You can talk to me on my off hours at the shed, but, the timing is interesting. So this is my plea to Franklin residents. You want to get involved, that's great. You can become your own advocates. I would love to teach people about, I could try and lawyerize it a little bit. But yeah, it's really just education and trying to get people to understand why we do what we do. And, I'm sure you heard me earlier with the people on 844 Lincoln Street. I mean, I am frustrated personally that the state has not taken action for stormwater faster than what it has, because then we have single-family homes and, they're exempt, right? But that's where I turned to the audience and I said, you guys need to call him. The community needs to mobilize to help us help them, is I guess what I'm getting at.
In addition, you can't control what some people are going to do.
No.
If they get a burr under their saddle and they want to make a big stink about it, that's exactly what they're gonna do.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's more grassroots, Michael, unfortunately. Unless you want to hire
Yep.
someone. Build out
No,
my
I think
department.
you're right.
We need more staff.
But I just want us to be thinking about it, and I don't know, maybe there's something we can put in the bylaws, I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
I mean, if you find something for a bylaw, I will be asking you, we'll have this conversation in a moment, I will be asking you for comments. Our bylaw's pretty robust, when it comes to finding
Yep.
violations or taking a path forward. And I'm, just before I get on Facebook, like me asking for a staff, it's probably in poor taste given things. Sorry, Franklin. I'm just trying to be tongue in cheek.
And to the point, we're not police.
Correct.
We're not tasked with going out and snooping around everybody's
Correct.
backyard or anything to try to find something.
Hold it right there.
The town,
Before you drop that bag of grass,
yeah,
hold it right
the
there.
town had an agent that was like that, and he was in
Yes.
court almost every month.
That
And
is
that is
true.
taking resources
That is
away
true.
from everybody else.
That is
And then
true.
you get harassment claims, and you get civil rights
At a great
claims.
cost to the citizens.
Yes, and you get land use claims.
That's right.
And I don't know if
That's
you've
right.
noticed, but Massachusetts is very land court friendly. Making a joke, right, about development. So
Right.
they're going to opt for private property rights. That is a big thing. I'm sure you hear it at MAC updates too, like private, or MAC presentations. Private property rights are big, especially with
Right.
tree removals. Like, you
Sure.
gotta be careful about tree removals, because then you get
yeah.
private property rights.
Yeah.
And those sorts of things. I'm good to move on.
Okay, all right. So the next item on the discussion is bylaw scoping fee.
Yes, so I did reach out to Beta for bylaw, scope and fee. It'd be $7,000 out of the Wetlands Fund, for review, and then, collaboration with me and technical assistance. So what I've asked John to do, I've already given him, my list. I've given him your comments as you've given them to me. And kind of where I see the direction going. I've mentioned trees, I've mentioned looking at other buffer zone preambles. I definitely don't want to change our jurisdiction. We're unique in that we protect IBWs, we segment out the buffer zone, and we actually have buffer zone onto bordering land subject to flooding. I haven't seen any other town that has that. So where Beta will come in is they're just gonna be a receptacle and do all the research and compile, pull out some examples, and then we'll sit down and draft, essentially. So I guess my request is two-part. One, approval of the scope and fee out of the Wetlands Fund, which for new commissioners and anybody online, that is the fund paid for by application fees. It is not from any other town budget. It can only be used for wetland conservation items. And then two, send me comments, maybe by the end of next week, on
Okay.
where you think we can improve.
Yep.
So it's $7,000
Yeah.
for him to review that? I don't know.
I think that's money well spent.
I don't know why.
I agree.
We're not gonna,
No, I agree, no.
We're not gonna
That's why we came up with this idea.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
because they.
getting somebody else to do it is a damn
also,
good
they
idea.
have- They have access to.
They have,
Yeah,
yeah.
tons of
Oh,
access.
so much.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on, so,
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones you want to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
They've seen it all, so, I mean,
And we work with them all the time, yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's.
So once
Do you
it's,
guys agree?
Agreed.
once it's approved, when will they start looking at that?
I mean, I'll probably text John on my way home, well, not on my way home, I'll text him before I go home. So probably next week. They're pretty light right now, because we're light, so.
Well, we're getting into winter too, right? Things are slowing down? Yes.
There's a few things coming.
Okay, yeah?
Yeah, there's some things coming.
Okay.
Something was withdrawn today
Oh, really? Okay.
on Bent Street,
That's
which,
true.
yeah.
Really?
So the reason I asked that is because, so ours we cite 310 CM Moretown. and
State.
State, so.
Yep.
So I just jumped onto the website today, it seems like there's gonna be an update maybe
There is.
potentially later this year, so.
There is. We do know that. We're still waiting for updated stormwater too. because the stormwater standards haven't been finalized. So this is, how do I phrase this differently? Drafting ideas, but I would not suggest going in front of town council until that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, just kind of say, at the meeting, at the annual meeting that's coming up next month, one of the sessions is about the new, so they're coming to actually talk about.
Yeah, this,
Okay.
it seems like they were looking for feedback at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just because we're approving the $7,000, it does not mean it needs to be spent now. So it's just, now we can
Basically,
start, they can start.
Put the
yeah,
money
exactly.
aside effectively for the
Yep.
project.
Yep. But that's a good
Allocate
point,
the
Louis,
money
thank
for
you
the
for
project.
mentioning that, especially for
Thanks
other
for getting
commissioners.
that set up. That's
Yep.
great.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
One point, if the commissioner decided to go out and look at how a project was going along, do they just walk on and say, I'm the commissioner, you can trust me?
Mm-hmm.
One thing we
Yeah,
talked
I
about
w-
was stopping by and getting a vest.
Yeah, I'd probably, well, yeah.
I think especially for
Don't
construction
crack it
zones.
out of a brand new bag, Richard.
Huh?
Don't crack a new vest out of a brand new bag. You gotta kick it in the dirt a little bit. They won't
I
respect
got-
you.
I got a hard hat that's 20 years old and looks,
There you go, oh yeah, you got it, you're good.
and I got more vests than you can patch on a mile.
You put it in a big rock polisher.
Yes, you can go out on any site. You guys actually have more rights than I do. I am your agent. I am not the commissioner. Which is
The
why
director.
I am the director. Yes, thank you. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, but I would just say, let me know,
I will.
just in case, like recently, we've had some contractors get a little overzealous in their emotions with somebody showing up unannounced.
Really?
For a site inspection,
Oh, yeah.
which is what a site inspection is supposed to be. So it'd just be
Trust
good,
me,
and
I
this is
can-
what I tell people too, like if you're just, okay, there's a tree hanging down, if I give any administrative approval or anything like that, I always say it's just better to let me know because somebody's going to call. Remember, I have 7,000 eyes, so just better to let me know.
Well, I
I
thought I'd
know it may
drop by
seem like
that,
oversight, but,
Franklin Heights.
oh, please do. Oh, you go.
I might
As
wanna-
long as that's okay with you. I guess
No,
I
no,
shouldn't
that's
give the
fine.
approval. That
Don't.
is a you
Don't.
thing, Jeff,
Don't.
If
sorry.
somebody wants to get lippy with me,
Yeah,
we can handle that.
there we go. I'll get Bridger down there. Talk to you.
I know.
Talk some sense into it.
I know.
I've had that happen before. It
Yeah.
Didn't go well.
Yeah, they didn't find him for days.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Okay.
okay, so you just need to vote for the approval.
Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the expense for the scope and fee study.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a motion to approve the scope and fee for the Conservation Department request from Beta to assist in the review and draft of the updated bylaws and regulations.
Second.
Okay,
Prove.
Approve.
approve. Online.
Approve.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay, and now, comments. I don't think we have any updates
I
except.
do.
Yeah, MAC does not have an update. You guys know our meeting's coming up, our agenda's pretty set, et cetera, et cetera. I hope everyone's coming. Anyway, Natural Resources Protection Manager update.
Yes, this isn't so much, well, I guess it kind of is. Mark your calendars, October 16th from 4 to 6:30 at the Senior Center in their multipurpose room. It's right next to the cafe, is the Schmitz Farm and Maple Hill, open house for
Oh.
the master plan.
4 to 6:30?
Yes, town
was
council's
the
at
date?
7. October 16th, it's Wednesday. So these are just concept ideas, mind you, based on the open space plan and master plan. This is a master plan of it, but it's not the master plan, it's an entire parcel planning. So concept plans just show, potential activities, like for example, at Schmitz Farm, expansive community gardens, trails, interpretive signing. I put the barn on there. We have feasibility studies for the barn. So that'll probably, hopefully, I hope, Jeff, come in front of CPC.
Yep.
I hope. as long as the numbers are good.
Unlike Maplegate.
Yeah, that one's expensive. This, I don't know, Gus said maybe $1 million.
Really?
Yeah,
To fix the barn? It's not in terribly good shape.
Yeah, I can kind of see
But-
that.
Well, they have to
My-
make it for public.
Yes.
it's not meant
What
for
are they
the
gonna do?
public.
Yeah, well, that's true.
The floors are rotted, the beams are rotted. You know, it is hand-built, like, so my argument was, well, can we do a little bit at a time and it's unveiled at a later date? So you keep it, you work to restore it,
Fix the roof first.
yeah, you do things like that,
Yeah.
Then you can actually work on it.
yeah. So,
Tri-county carpentry.
there are options. So,
Hmm.
yeah, somebody else suggested, well, we'll just build a barn, and I said, oh, no, you're not.
Huh.
It is that barn or it's no barn. Oh, I'll have to, do you recall the pictures? When they built it by hand? You don't, but I'll reshare it for the new commissioners, but it's a testament to.
That's the second barn there though, right?
This is the second barn, yeah, cause the
First one,
hurricane in
first, yeah.
1936,
I think that's what he said.
yeah, blew everything else down.
Yeah.
Man, old photos.
Really cool stuff.
It's really cool. So anyways, feasibility study's ongoing, but I shouldn't get too much into that because we'll get into that at the open house. And that's all I got.
Okay, anything else, no, guys, anything, or should we adjourn? You good?
Has the call to sign up for the MAC conference come out yet?
Months ago.
Yeah, I sent emails around. Let me know if you'd like to register, I assume you do, and what workshops you would like to attend.
Yeah, we got some really good people coming too.
Yeah.
Keynote's great.
Derek Adams from DPW is going. I convinced him because it's stormwater. And if I just might, I'm sorry to keep you, I know it's late, but I just want to provide another testimony about education and all the work we've been doing. So Derek has routinely told me that he's reached out to conservation once in his 11 years here prior to me, and he received a response back, and all it said was no, period. That was it. So very unapproachable. I started, and I'm who I am, so now they don't have a choice. But Derek called me last week and said, hey, I have a Zoom presentation for stormwater, or I have a PowerPoint presentation for a Zoom workshop, stormwater workshop. Can we meet on Zoom? Because I'm working from home, and I show you my presentation, and I just present to you. And I said, okay, that's fine. And he presented to me, and I'm looking at all the photos, and it's all about like roadway flooding or things that they've had to do to mitigate culverts, like putting a telephone pole through it to get out the debris, and then the telephone pole gets stuck, and all these actions, right? And we go through the presentation. I said, wow, the photos were really engaging. I liked how you told the story. It's interesting how you had to pivot and be creative. And I left it at that. And 2 hours later, I get a phone call, and he said, I just realized that every photo I showed you had a violation on it. And I said, I know. I didn't say anything, though. And he said, I'm going to tell them that. And I'm going to tell them that now I know. And I'm going to bring up Franklin Conservation. So I just wanted to show that even internally, the gears are working, and the fact that he thought about it and caught it himself.
That's a win.
Total win. And these all happened before I started, just for what it's worth. Other than Prospect Street, but that's, so, yeah, it's good. All right, done.
So I think, motion to adjourn, yes?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.